Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 4-year-old Dr. Fundi Digital Health Channel. My name is Dr. Fundi Lenyati, alternatively known as Dr. Fundi. A little bit about my background. I'm a family physician. I've been doing this for over 30 years. So I think I'm a veteran in the medical space. But that's not what I'm here about today. Um, I am the founder and the host of this platform, and its purpose is to fill in what we see as a gap in terms of mainstream media, where there's less conversations, difficult conversations about issues that are in the healthcare space. So we thought we should have an alternative channel whereby from time to time we can invite people and debate and talk about issues in the healthcare space without any limitations. So that's the purpose, but also to contribute to public health, advocacy on whatever issues that are, quite important for people to, be made aware of. And today we are honored to host one of the patriotic South Africans, somebody who makes me to feel good to be a South African. And he's been consistent in doing this for over 30 years, right? He makes me feel good to have been born in this southern tip of Africa. And our special guest today is none other than Zackie Achmat, who needs no introduction to most South Africans, especially those who've been around for at least as long as I've been around. But maybe what they call them, the millennials and the Gen Zs may need a bit of introduction. So let me do a bit of that as well.
Very
So
shortly.
Zackie Ahmad, Zackie is a movement builder, a political activist, and law reformer. He has spent his life fighting for justice, equality, dignity, and freedom, particularly for working class people and vulnerable minorities. He has been schooled by great mentors. He has worked within the ANC to end the white minority rule that was up to 1994. Since 1994, he co-founded and led movements such as the Treatment Action Campaign, Equal Education, Social Justice Coalition, Ndifuna Ukwazi, I Want to Know, Reclaim the City, and Unite Behind. These movements focused on political education, research, mobilization, and litigation. Zackie has collaborated with activists, HIV and AIDS, and humanitarian agencies globally, including the UN AIDS and the World Health Organization. Currently, this is a man who reinvents himself, but he is consistent in terms of fighting for good. He currently fights state capture, corruption, mismanagement, fraud, incompetence, and criminality in government. That is through Unite Behind. But the purpose of him being invited here today is the fact that he is running as an independent candidate for the 2024 elections. His aim as an independent member of parliament is to work alongside a movement of people and other MPs of integrity. I repeat, MPs of integrity. Some people nowadays, they're not sure if the honorable people should still be called honorable people, you know? But anyway, working with MPs of integrity to fix the state, all right? Reclaim parliament and build our communities. So This is Zackie Achmat, our special guest today. Zackie, welcome to the
Do,
Dr. Fundi channel.
do you remember when we first met each other?
Yes, over 20 years ago, man. Over 20 years ago. And so I was telling my colleagues here, Lizel Anthony, who's a psychologist that I work with, and Ionela, who is our digital marketer. I was talking to them and saying, there was a time where we were, on the streets, in the big halls, the time when denialism of HIV and AIDS was the big problem in this country, led at the highest office of this land. And you leading a group of like minded people and civil society, you were out there working and bringing hope to those who did not need to suffer or die prematurely because somebody believed that ARVs were toxic to an extent that they should be denied to our compatriots. So welcome, Zaki.
Thanks, Funia. So, what's your first question?
No. This is an easy space. I think the first question that comes to mind is um, you used to work with a number of people who are in government today. That is pre 1994.
Yeah.
Yet you have now decided to be an independent candidate at these upcoming 2024 elections. And the first question, therefore, is why? I would have thought um, numbers count, and therefore you'll see strength in numbers, but actually, the way I know you, though, you see strength in independent thinking.
Um, the real thing for me is, first of all, I won't be alone ever. And we can only change the country and the world with numbers.
Yeah,
But numbers are not the numbers of people wearing a T-shirt.
yeah,
And numbers is not the number of people who put up their hand to vote for you when you're in
yeah.
parliament. The important thing is to build the power of people through knowledge. And if you will remember this, when we started the treatment action campaign, the level of knowledge related to HIV specifically, whether it was scientific knowledge, medical knowledge, pharmacology, the intellectual property rights of medicines and so on, related to medicines, all these things were not within our daily vocabulary. At that
Yes.
time, we dealt with HIV from the point of view of discrimination. That insurance industry or mining houses would use the test to exclude people rather than to treat people. So when triple therapy became possible, one of the things that was clear to all of us is that even a person who has had no formal education will be able to understand science if it is explained correctly and if people are engaged with it. And so the building of a movement based on knowledge, on fundamental rights, on research and evidence and knowledge, that was at the heart of why today we have more than 5 million people on ARV treatment, because people started knowing these are the side effects of ARVs. These are the good things of ARVs. These drugs are bad. These drugs are good. This is how I should eat and so on. So for me, going to Parliament as an independent means I want to continue that type of work with movements. If I sit in a political party, I've got to look at who's sitting behind me, stabbing me in the back, who's sitting in front of me, trying to kick me down.
Yeah.
Political parties, unfortunately, what has happened is the trust in political parties has disappeared. And what we have now is people being alienated from politics because we can turn a swimming pool into a fire pool by saying so. So our job is, I think your job, my job, all our job is to encourage people to take an interest in politics, to work on politics. And
yes,
as an MP, I want to be accountable to people, not to a party. I want to be accountable to the Constitution, not the rules from Luntuli House or up here in Cape Town where Madam Zilla sits.
lovely, lovely. Yes. So, I mean, this is the first, national and provincial elections that are allowing for independent candidates to actually, stand out there. And it was not an easy, fight just to get that. But our constitutional court, ultimately said
Yeah,
it must happen.
yeah,
And, there were a number of shortcomings or stumbling blocks that were put on the way of those who wanted to. But somehow, those also did not succeed. And so I'm actually glad that we are hosting you as an independent candidate. We hosted another lady about 2 weeks ago, Anele Mda.
yeah.
You will know her from the
From
Where
Cope.
is My
Where's my
Right.
photo?
So, but today we are talking about you. Now, just reflecting on our discussion today, because today you are here to unpack what is it in the healthcare space that you will prioritize working
Right.
with like-minded people when you get to parliament. You see, I'm not saying if you get to parliament, when you get, to parliament. Now, but before we get into that, a few weeks ago, it was the World Health Day, and Dr. Tedros, who is the DG of the WHO, he had a message for the general public to claim their right to healthcare. The slogan was "My health, my right." My health, my right. Basically emphasizing that healthcare is a basic human
Fundamental.
right. But he didn't end there. He said people must know their rights in terms of the quality of health services. They must know their rights in terms of education on matters health. They must know their rights in terms of accessing relevant information for them to take responsibility about their
Yeah,
health. But he also said right to health depend on other social determinants of health,
yeah, yeah.
like quality of housing, decent work, water, access to clean water, air, good nutrition, violence, and that is free of violence and discrimination. He also said people should stand up for universal health coverage,
Absolutely.
right? In their countries. Also, he said the people should hold the leaders accountable, including mobilizing communities and ensuring that the right to health is realized by all. Now, with that message, I just want to hear from you before we get into deeper what is it that you're going to prioritize. That message from Dr. Tedros, in the context of South Africa, that has health care for all, access to healthcare, quality healthcare for all, is actually in the constitution, but not everybody is enjoying it. I just wanted to hear your comment around.
Fundile, if one looks at our healthcare system, you would know this, we've discussed it many times in the past. It is not only divided between public and private, which is deeply discriminatory. It is also divided between public in the city of Cape Town and public in the city of eThekwini. Two different public systems. The system in Cape Town versus the system in Riviersonne-End. Very different healthcare systems. So we have multi-layered healthcare systems within the public sector itself, where the people in the rural areas are the most excluded from any public or private healthcare service. So that is one of the injustices that we're sitting with. But at the same time, I would like to take a step back to 94.
Yeah.
In the first 5 years of the ANC's rule, or governing at that point, now it rules, at that time it governed, In the
Yes.
first 5 years of the ANC's governance, we had a healthcare revolution in law. We established an essential drug list, which didn't exist before for hospitals. We established that there should be generic substitution for medicines that are off patent already. Maternal and child healthcare became free. Primary healthcare clinics were built on a large scale. And we had some serious legislative interventions, the termination of the right to terminate pregnancy, the Medical Schemes Act, which for the first time allowed for non-discrimination within the private medical schemes area. So before Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, before her, a woman who was pregnant would have been told, pregnancy is your own choice. You have to pay more or you're not covered. So, and that continued for illnesses such as diabetes, any chronic medication, your levy was higher than young and healthy. So our government passed some really great laws in order to transform the healthcare system. But three things militated against that. The first is we were living in a time of austerity like we are now. And so no new jobs, places were filled. So there was the austerity phase. We outsourced, for instance, cleaning of hospital services. And you know that keeping a hospital clean is a specialist job. Because you have to know about pathogens and so on. So if you lose the people who are good at it, you're going to suffer. So outsourcing healthcare became, certain services in healthcare became a serious issue. On top of that, suddenly the healthcare budget had to be spread from serving a few to serving everyone. And together with that, the more painful thing is that the structuring of our tertiary healthcare system meant that we weren't training new people on a scale necessary to develop our healthcare system and to unify public and private. So health is a fundamental right, but we have to think about how to bring the public and private sector together and create a single healthcare system. So you want to know what my position on NHI is?
No, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
Okay.
I'm gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Yeah. All right. So maybe before we get to NHI, because I think a lot of people, they go into NHI, and obviously there are things that are glaring there that are causing discomfort to many people. But maybe the concept of universal health coverage, because for me, that's where the foundation is. Universal health coverage as a resolution of the WHO, as something that the United Nations and the WHO are advocating for as part of the sustainable development goals. I think number 3, that countries. So I just want you to talk about just SDG, sorry, universal health coverage as a solution to the health problems we have. And then separating that from NHI as the proposed solution of, or our customized version of UHC. Because a lot of people get confused between the concept of universal health coverage and its principles. And many people don't have problems with that. The problems come in terms of what our version of UHC in South Africa is, which is the NHI.
Okay. First, at the outset, I've always been in the Freedom Charter speaks of universal healthcare, and the Freedom Charter is still in my heart. So I believe there should be a universal healthcare system, free at the point of need, funded by public taxes. In relation to public and private, I think our public system is wholly underinvested in large scales undermined and overburdened, and we have a private healthcare sector which functions perfectly for people who need it, but is the most inefficient and least cost effective for middle class people. So what we have now is we have the exclusion of working class communities from quality healthcare, and we have the double taxation on middle class people who pay taxes for the bad service, don't use it, and then pay extra money at very highly inflated rates to be treated. Now, that's not the work. Fixing that up is not the work of one day. For me, universal health coverage, we need to think it through. We need to do something now. And what we need to do is in relation to private healthcare, we need to start implementing the commission, the inquiry into private health sector, and so on, the competition commission. We have to start there. We also have to invest in clinics and hospitals, in staff and in training of nurses and doctors and so on. So I think when it comes to universal healthcare, yes. When it comes to the NHI, I think there are so many unanswered questions, and there's enormous resistance from people who have vested interest on both sides, but particularly vested interest from the private sector that needs to be addressed. But right now, you get someone who's waiting outside a clinic and dies. Waiting outside a clinic. So we won't be able to attract the middle classes who we need into the system unless the system is functional.
Yeah.
For everyone.
So basically, and this it's going to be a yes or no type of question.
Yeah.
Do you support NHI based on the info available in the NHI bill, which was approved in Parliament and is awaiting that new pen for the president to sign it? As it is, would you say you are supporting it? Because the principles, I don't think any right-thinking person has got a problem with the principles behind universal health coverage and therefore NHI. But in terms of the detail as contained in the bill, which basically would mean one giant medical scheme for everyone, but we don't know how it's going to be funded. That's one big issue right now. Number two, we are told, I think in section 33 or clause 33, that once it has been fully implemented, there will be no medical schemes as we know them, but they can only be top-up schemes.
Yeah.
There is the issue of the power or powers of the minister working with his advisors. So a lot of people, they have got the issue around these. So there's a lot of anxiety. But I just want to hear from you, Zackie. As we know it based on the bill that was passed in Parliament and the National Council of Provinces before the president, do you think the president should sign it into law, or do you think it should go back to be further negotiated on these areas that are causing a lot of discomfort? Yes, some of those are vested interests.
I think I don't do yes, no, ne?
Yes,
but I'll
I
say
know.
this. I'll say this. Yes, I support the principles.
Yes.
I don't believe that Parliament has done its job properly in listening to the more than 100,000 submissions that it received. It cherry-picked those it wanted to listen to. And so despite this enormous participation process, the outcome doesn't reflect that participation. I have the same reservations on funding. I have certain other reservations in the quality of care within the public system, which is not being addressed. And so whether the president signs it or not, this bill is going to be around for the next 10 years in either in an act being challenged by all the vested interests or by any number of people who would not get access to decent and quality services. So my sense is I want us to focus on primary healthcare, get that right, focus also on secondary and tertiary healthcare, and get that right. For me, the issue right now is about people's health, not about the system that gives it. The system needs to be fixed. The state needs to be fixed. But there is no plan in that bill as it stands that says this is how we're going to fix it step by step. And that's a problem. And that allows those who wish to profiteer from healthcare, it allows them to hide behind the absence of participation, the bad public healthcare service, you're going to take all our money, etc., etc. I think there needs to be a better way of doing this, and the better way is for implement the recommendations from the commission, the Competition Commission, and let's start rebuilding our public healthcare system. Anything else is going to keep us in this debate that has been going on since 2007.
Yeah. So I think when the bill, the NHI bill, was approved in Parliament before it went to the NCOP, one of the things that the national minister said was the country is going the NHI direction because currently both the public sector and the private sector are heading for disaster.
Yes.
And so, but an average South African doesn't know that there are challenges with the private health system. They see it as a system that is working. Yet, me and you know that that Competition Commission health market inquiry did identify serious problems with the private sector. But I just wanted your take around that, because I see a lot of people in the private sector saying many countries in Europe, they are running basically their universal health coverage. Why doesn't South Africa allow the private sector to just take over and run it?
Look, I'll give you an example, personal example. I developed spinal osteoarthritis for being too much on computers and phones. And what happened to me is for a short while, my left arm gave me problems and my left leg. And at one point I couldn't walk. What happened is I went to Somerset Hospital because I use the public healthcare sector mostly. I went to Somerset Hospital. They said to me, look, there is a problem here. We're going to give you a CT scan. Yes, there is a problem. We want you to get an MRI done at Groote Schuur. I had to wait 3 months to get the MRI done. That was for my arm. On the day that I get to the Groote Schuur, my leg goes numb and I can't walk. I get pushed in a wheelchair. In that waiting for an MRI machine is 15, literally, there are more than 100 people waiting and they can only serve 15. And people came from as far back as George, many with really serious brain damage and so on. I was lucky that a Mitchell's Plain old lady said, no, he's in pain, let him go, rather than me. But what that meant is that I got in and they said to me, oh, we can't do your leg. We can only do your arm. And the reason for that is very simple. Your doctor's letter says only the one. So even if we can see you have a problem, we're not allowed to do it. So anyway, I go home. Barbara Hogan and Fatima Hassan take me to Christian Barnard. I arrive, they say to me, Mr. Achmat, would you like to do your MRI now or in the morning? Now or in the morning. In the public sector, people had to wait 3 months, and on the same day, their appointment would be rescheduled. Now, that's an inefficiency of such a huge proportion. You imagine that it was a resource that is shared between public and private. then the cost for the private patients would come down because it's economies of scale. But we have a whole range of the best technical equipment sitting in the private sector, underutilized and overcharged. But let's get to my program.
Yes. So, just for the benefit of the people, that inquiry, the big thing was there's a lot of over-servicing.
Exactly.
There's a lot of overcharging. There's a lot of wastage. All of these things, you're getting the healthcare that you need, but I think OECD came and actually shared information that shows that our guys here, on average, I think it's like two times or 2.5 times what it should be costing elsewhere.
Yeah.
So the issue of cost in a pool that is shrinking of people who are contributing to medical aid is a problem. That is what the minister was talking about, to say this train is gonna, have a problem lower, a few years down the line. Whilst on the other hand, on the public health side, we've got the underfunding, which leads to, poor infrastructure, poor maintenance of equipment, understaffing, and all of the things that we about. But now, so you feel that NHI as it is, maybe there should be a program of revitalizing and improving the
public
infrastructure, the equipment, the staffing, the training.
The people.
That would then attract people back to have confidence. But if you just legislate, you have an issue with that. That legislating is going to lead to a backlash and this thing being stopped for the next decade because it will be challenging costs. Because most of the big people in the private sector, they have a big war chest. But let's get to you now. What are the priority areas of healthcare that you want to go? Because you can't take everything, but there are things that are close to you that you want to put your energy and mobilize like-minded people to actually go, and ensure that laws are changed to ensure better health.
Now, I think the most important committee in Parliament is the Standing Committee on Public Accounts.
Yes.
Because every government department and state-owned entity goes through it, report studying of what they've spent their money on, have they spent it well, and so on. I believe that there hasn't been enough healthcare oversight in that committee. What's close to my heart and to what I see on the streets and what I know from my comrades is that mental health care is the most underserviced part and most misunderstood part of our healthcare system. So that is one of the key problems that we need to address. Together with that, what that very often leads to is substance use disorders. And in our country, the single largest substance use disorder is alcohol substance use disorder. And for me, the building of a movement around young people on a harm reduction platform, starting with alcohol, but you can do the same with harm reduction in sugar, for example. Yes. But starting with an understanding of how the interrelationship between mental health and substance use disorders. So you would know this from harm reduction. You've got supply reduction, you have the demand reduction, you have a whole bunch of other things. But essentially, for me, going to Parliament means giving myself the chance to study and to assist other people. If I'm an MP, I want to come to people with knowledge to educate me about what needs to be done. I don't have all the knowledge myself. And not only to progressive experts, but also to communities where the knowledge about what works and what doesn't work is the greatest.
Yeah.
So I would like to see a very clear program of how we're going to do mental health, substance disorders. I would like also to address the question of the costs of health technologies. As you know, we live in a society which is one of the most obese societies in the world. We also have major hypertension, diabetes, and obesity epidemics, which include increasing. Sorry?
The non-communicable diseases.
The non-communicable diseases. And what has happened there is we virtually in the same position as we were with HIV, where there isn't a proper protocol for its treatment for obesity, diabetes, hypertension, the illnesses surrounding the non-communicable. There isn't one that takes into account how do we ensure that people stay healthy, how do we prevent, how do we treat individuals, and so on. And you know the new sets of drugs that are available to reduce obesity and that can be used very effectively for type 2 diabetes. Now, what we have...
GLP-1s, yeah.
Exactly. What's happening is Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly, and these companies are making a killing on the prices of these medicines. Now, again, the bringing down of the prices of those medicines are essential, but they need to be part of a comprehensive way of dealing with our epidemic of obesity, of diabetes, of hypertension, and so on. So I would like to focus on that and push that with people in the medical fraternity, medics, the Diabetes Association. In relation to mental health, I would like to work with groups like the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, the KwaZulu-Natal mental health advocacy groups. Those are the people whose voices need to be brought into Parliament.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can assist with that.
Yeah. Now, my colleague here, Liesl Anthony, who is a clinical psychologist, I know she was going to ask you a question around issues of mental health. Maybe let's give an opportunity to pose the question to you. Yonela, you will pose the question on behalf of the millennials and the Gen Zs to Zackie.
Thank you, Doc. Hi, Zackie. I think you've answered my question on mental health, because I was going to ask, what is your view on how do we approach that? But I think what I've liked, what you spoke about is over the course of this webinar series, everybody speaks about quality healthcare and access to quality healthcare. For me, as a female in South Africa, what is your view on what does that entail? What does quality healthcare for specifically female, the vulnerable, and the marginalized going to look like in terms of what you want to achieve as an MP working with other movements?
I think, first let me say, the importance of that question relates to those who are marginalized and excluded from healthcare in the first instance. So how on earth have we not researched or got sufficient research done on periods or women's periods, for example, and the pain that comes with the cycle of menstruation? There's very little research that deals specifically with the medicines that you need for that. Now, for me, quality healthcare, it's difficult to define, but first and foremost, it's treating people with dignity. Any person who is ill needs to be treated with dignity. And the people providing the care, they need to be treated with dignity by the system that employs them. The second thing is that there needs to be a greater focus on prevention, and that particularly relates now to junk foods, sugar. I don't know if you saw this Nestle thing that they did with baby feed, putting sugar in it. only for Africans, sugar for Africans.
Yeah.
I can't believe this, you know. So my sense is that when you talk about women's health, healthcare for the elderly, healthcare for people living with disability, in my campaign, one of the things we did is start a disability activist forum. One of the groups in Easterrivier, right, they don't have transport people with physical disabilities can't use public transport because there is none. The minibus taxis won't take people on it because it takes a double seat.
Yeah.
So here you have people who have to travel 20 kilometers to their nearest clinic. They have to get an Uber to take them. And then they have to go twice. Talk about efficiency. Once you have to go for your meds, the other time you have to go for your kimbies, your nappies. Now, that takes a lot of money out of people's pocket. But more importantly, it takes their dignity away. So quality healthcare in the first instance is about dignity. The second thing is to ensure that every person in the healthcare system is trained to be able to see the humanity in someone, and that their conditions of work allows them to look you in the eye and smile and say, how are you doing? Not say, oh, and he's nog een. You know, those for me, I'm going on too much. But for me, quality is about how you treat people and the outcome. Whether the outcome is that you're going to prevent an illness, or whether you're going to treat it effectively, or when someone is in the last stages of death, that you assist them in the best way possible for them to pass on.
Thank you. So it's not just in the it's in the doing of the act. It's not in the saying so. I want to come back to what you mentioned about calling something something just by saying so doesn't mean it's so. It's by doing it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Zackie.
Thank you. Pleasure.
All right, Yonela, do you want to represent the young people of this country?
Yes. Mr. Achmat, my question is surrounding the work that you guys did with HIV and how there was such a big effort to educate people about HIV at the time. And now we're seeing rises in my generation's in the prevalence of HIV with my generation because people aren't as knowledgeable as they were. Is that one of the things that are very important for you? Because I really think that there needs to be a big push to re-educate a lot of people nowadays about HIV and the prevalence in the country.
Manila, you're absolutely correct. You know, when I put on my HIV positive t-shirt now, people look at me strangely and they're like, take a step back. And yet, not so long ago, everybody wanted to wear those t-shirts. So with a successful treatment program, which is also a successful prevention program by itself, with a successful treatment program has the urgency of getting people to prevent HIV and to treat it, to ensure that we have long-lasting PrEP and so on. These things don't happen anymore in the same way. And so we're not only seeing the infections continuing, but also that there isn't sufficient research being done on how people like myself, who I'm now 62, how HIV affects people who are older now. Because we're going to start getting the same illnesses that people who've lived on top of our HIV. The epidemic of loneliness for people living with HIV, older people in general, but older people living with HIV in particular. So yes, there's a job to do, and I think this brings me back to harm reduction and substance use disorders, because one of the key routes into becoming infected with a sexually transmitted infection or so on is risky behavior. And risky behavior, particularly in young people, happens very often when there's a substance abuse disorder. Not substance use, not drinking a few glasses of wine or having one or two beers. That's not the problem. It is when there's a substance use disorder, binge drinking and so on, that risky behaviors take off. So we're not doing that type of education that we need to do again. Sorry, Yanela, I'm going on too much.
Thank you so much. I think that's really important, and it's one of the biggest things that I'm talking about at the moment with people my age. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
So with Yonela in February, because we've got some podcasts. So and some stuff on TikTok. And there was an article from Johannesburg, from here in Gauteng, that was showing that the prevention message is not being implemented.
Yeah.
So the success on what you fought for, which was ARVs and the medical science and the improvements there, have now gone to a point where people feel, you know what, why should I do a PEP or PrEP? That is, take this to prevent before, if there's going to be high risk, or after. Okay, the ABC message is getting drowned by the fact that there are drugs that are effective to actually manage the risk.
I think it's, if we treated people in 2001, 2002, 2003, the infection rate would have been half what it is now, or not the infection rate and the absolute numbers of people that are infected now. Because treatment itself, as you know, for me, I'm on ARVs. If I had unprotected sex, I wouldn't pass it on because my viral load has been undetectable for more than 20 years now. But if I had sex with someone unprotected who was not on PrEP, and they have a drug-resistant virus, and pass that on to me, it's difficult. It's things that we're not having the conversation about in public and in the open way we used to have it before. So, we also have the difficulty, Yonela raised the question of young people in HIV. Young people who live with HIV at the moment, those who got it when they were born, and those who just happen to not use. So you have a whole generation of young people living with HIV, some who grew up with it, and they still feel stigmatized, they fear. Stuff there we need to look at.
Yeah. So we've got 10 minutes before we wrap up. Now, back to Liesel's question around mental health.
Yeah.
When I introduced you earlier, I talked about vulnerable communities, and all of that. Now, the LGBTQIA community, when you look at mental health, because of the discrimination and the stigmatization and all the challenges they are fearing for their lives, because in some areas they are killed and all of that. So literature does show us that, things like depression and anxiety tend to be higher in those communities than the general population. Now, I know that that community is a community, it's a vulnerable community that is also close to your heart in terms of their rights. So what I would like to know from you, when you get to Parliament, will you be raising your voice on health issues and other issues that this particular community would like their issues to be lifted up?
Right. One of the great parts of my campaign is we've got a disability activist forum for people living with disability, Amachochombe and backyarders for people who need homes. We've got a forum, the Youth in Action Forum, focusing on harm reduction and substance use disorder. There are also queer youth in there. But also, we've got Queer Revolution, which is an activist forum of young queer people across the Western Cape, or mainly across Cape Town at the moment. What is important to me is there are certain things. Women, let's start with women. Women have specific mental health needs. Men have specific mental health needs. particularly young Black, African, and colored working class men who totally excluded from the economic system in many ways. So you have that part of it. So we all have specific needs, not separate needs.
Yes.
We have specific needs within a similar system. So what we've done is I signed a contract with all my supporters, Zackie 2024 supporters. We sign a contract of accountability. I don't do what I say I'm going to do. You can hold me accountable. You can have my pay deducted. You can have me removed if I do something criminal. And it's legally enforceable while I'm in Parliament, not after, while I'm in Parliament. So I did a signing with queer people, and there are two major things that people suffer: mental health and violence. And obviously the two are interrelated. So one of the things we're proposing is for Queer Revolution to set up queer safety and support, queer support and safety groups, which work with local neighborhood watches. So the health issues, I mean, you know, I'm queer, so I grew up in the, I was never part of the queer culture in the way that many people are, because I was part of a broader political culture.
Yeah.
But the level of substance use disorder in queer communities is very serious.
Love. So now, as we wrap up, we've got about 5 minutes. I just want Liesl to make closing remarks, Yonela closing remarks, and what I want you, Zackie, to do. You know, in business we talk about an elevator pitch. You know, why should
30
somebody,
seconds.
you know, make an X next to that third voting ballot? You know, so please, your elevator pitch. But Liesl, quickly, 1 minute or 30 seconds. Yonela, quickly, 30 seconds, and then Zackie is going to tell us why him. Because we, you know, why him? You know, why should people vote for him? So, Liesl.
Yes, yeah, just some closing remarks, Doc. I think what I've liked, from what you've mentioned, Zackie, and I think what everybody would like to see is a party that comes in and that governs, or independents working with others governing South Africa again. And specifically for me as a female, I'll once again say maternal and child health care is something that's central for women in South Africa. Access to quality maternal and child health care, whether you're in the urban or in the rural areas. And there shouldn't be a discrepancy about, but oh, you're in a rural area. I think that is, for all of us, fundamentally what we would like to see. I think I like the fact that you say we all have specific needs, and you know, they're not separate. And I think that is something that has struck a chord with me. But also, I think what was fundamental is the right to decide on your own body. But I think also you can make the decision, but then not have access to execute that decision. And I think that is key. Are people, young people, you know, vulnerable people, marginalized people, females, do they have access to execute that? Yeah, so that is just, and one last thing, mental health being underserviced and misunderstood. That also struck a chord. Thanks.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yonela, 1 minute and nothing more. We've got 3 minutes thereafter for Zackie to tell South Africans why him.
Okay,
Why
so
should he?
I'm going to be very quick. I just want to say I'm grateful for being here because you're the first well-rounded conversation we've had. You've spoken about it from so many different points of views for according to the amount of people that exist in our culture. Like you've spoken about the important aspects for women, for queer people, for men, for every marginalized group, and I think that it's very important, especially to get my generation involved, to have a well-rounded conversation. So I just want to say thank you. Keep going forward with that. That's how you win us over.
Thank you.
Lovely. 3 minutes is for you, Zackie. why you in healthcare, but also broadly, because you're not going there just for matters of health. We are a social justice person, so you are well rounded, and yeah.
Fundile, perhaps I want to start by saying this is the most important election we're going to have for a very long time. And the reason I'm saying that is because the possibility of instability in our country is great. And therefore, we need people who can go into the system and make it work, and to win people's confidence back for democracy. I have a record of doing, because my politics is the politics of doing. It's always been, but with knowledge, not just do, but do with knowledge. And I'm part of building movements in order to go forward. Why I think you need to vote for me is the one topic we didn't discuss is state capture and mismanagement, and particularly in the healthcare sector, in the provinces and so on, the loss of money, the people being Babita Diokaran and so on. These are things that are close to my heart, and that I believe from a healthcare point of view, we have to tackle head on. When it comes to I know that I don't know many things. And it's my job to find people who can assist me. And it's my job to assist people who need my assistance. I don't want to hear my own voice in Parliament. I want to hear Liesl and Yonella's voice coming to tell Parliament, this is what's the problem with women's healthcare access in this area. So you need to vote me. You're going to get 3 votes. You're going to get 1 for your province. You can give that to your party or an individual. You can give another one. Then you have 2 national ones. The 2 national ones, one's parties only, and one is parties and independents. In the Western Cape, I'm the only independent. The only independent. And what I'm saying to you is, are you prepared to back an old horse with spinal osteoarthritis, but who knows how the system works, and who has some history of working with people? You can get me as your best anti-corruption candidate. And I'm not tied to any political party, but I will work with any MP of integrity, irrespective of which party they're from. And I will ensure that my vote goes for a president that will establish a very solid government on the basis of anti-corruption and on taking forward the society by looking after the interests of working class people.
Thank you very much. That's a mouthful, and I don't want to even come in and mess up that message. He has been around. We have seen him working. We have seen him sacrificing so much for others, and it's up to us to reflect on what we've been discussing. We were focusing on matters of health just for now, but there are many other areas that he's going to be involved in. And thank you very much, Zackie. Thank you very much, and all the best. I know that you will make it, to that parliament. We need more of you and people like you who are not bound by any, rules, from a party where they may be there, but they don't have a voice. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. I think we are now at 1901, so we need to end this conversation. This is going to be available on YouTube immediately. So anybody that would like to have this discussion, they just go to YouTube, Dr. Fundi Lenyati, without an H. They will find this YouTube conversation, and you can then share it within your platforms as part of Zackie Achmat 2024. Thank you very much, Zackie. Thank you to my colleagues and everyone who followed on YouTube and also on Facebook. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.